There's a lot to learn from this historic account of Jesus' temptation in the desert. We'll just go through a few of them. First of all, Jesus goes into the desert to be tempted. Sometimes we confuse temptation with sin, okay? It's not wrong if we're tempted. It's wrong if we give in to the temptation. Sometimes people will come to confession and they'll say, "Oh, Father, I've been struggling so much lately with, I've been tempted so much lately to, I don't know, I've been tempted a lot lately to look at pornography." And I'll say, "That's great. Nothing wrong with that," right? And they'll say, "What do you mean?" I say, "Oh, wait, do you mean that you've failed and given in and committed the sin of viewing pornography?" "Well, yeah, that's what I mean." "Okay, well, that's different. If you're tempted and you say no, guys, that's a W. That's a win. You got to put that up there and say, thanks be to God. I beat that one," right? Temptations are opportunities. Temptations are opportunities to win. Without temptation, without any desire towards sin, what virtue is there for us when we overcome and we say no? That's how we win, right? And Jesus is going into the desert to show us, to give us the model of how to overcome temptation. We don't just white knuckle it. We don't just say, "Oh, I'm not going to do that," right? What do? We turn to what the Lord offers instead, right? Okay, so weed, alcohol, pornography, adultery, fornication, theft, gambling. These things all offer us something, or we wouldn't be tempted by it, right? They offer us a high or a fix. They offer us a delusion of life that we would prefer over the difficulty and hardship of our real life. These are real things. They offer us that. But it's like ash in our mouth, right? But how do we overcome it then? If it's tasty, if it's tempting, if it seems good, how do we overcome it? Well, we remember what the Lord God offers instead. Initially, the Lord offers that. But in the end, the Lord offers that. If we overcome temptation. And this is how Jesus himself overcomes the temptation. The devil says, "Hey man, you look hungry." Jesus is like, "Of course, I haven't eaten for 40 days. Of course I look hungry," right? And the devil says, "Well, then turn this stone into bread." Well, what's Jesus do? He reminds himself of what his Father has said. Man does not live on bread alone. There's more. God's offering more than this quick fix. He's offering more than the easy way to obtain that PlayStation 4 and stealing it from your friend, right? He's offering something more than that. You're laughing. Did you steal your friend's PlayStation 4? You did, didn't you? Admit it. You can admit it. It's okay. No. So we overcome. So first of all, don't be afraid of temptation, okay? Don't be afraid of temptation. It's a danger. It is dangerous, okay? But you don't have to be afraid of it if you know how to overcome it. And Jesus has shown us how. We remind ourselves of, first of all, we admit that the temptation is tasty, okay? Don't pretend it's not, right? Don't pretend it's not. Ladies, you might not feel this way, but guys, you know, porn is attractive. There's something alluring about it, okay? Admit it, but then say no. Because it's not worth it. It's gross, right? But if we try to deny that something is attractive to us, we're going to be weaker against it, right? It's like when somebody comes around after you after you eat a big meal and somebody's like, "You want some dessert?" Of course you want dessert. Should you have dessert? Probably not, right? The way that I overcome that myself personally is like somebody comes around. "You guys are the worst at feeding priests because you stuff us," right? You just so much food. And then you're like, "You want this thing that's going to give you diabetes? This beautiful dolce dessert? Do you want that?" And this is the way I deal with it. I say, yes, I do want that, but no, I will not have that. That helps me overcome temptation, right? To admit, yes, there's something alluring about that. There's something seductive. There's something attractive. There's something good. There's something good in that. But for me right here and right now, it's not good, right? Human sexuality is a wonderful thing. It's amazing. It's great. It's like the best thing that God gives humanity. But in this moment, pornography is not the way to do that, right? In this moment, sleeping with my girlfriend or sleeping with my boyfriend is not the way to do that. The way to do that, the time to do that is when we are married in the church and not Posada Civil, right? That's still not married, by the way. You know that, right? Everybody here knows that? I think Father Tim has said that enough, right? Right? But when you're married sacramentally in the church, that's the time to enjoy that good thing. Any other time, it's a temptation. And we need to say, yes, it's attractive. Yes, I would love to do that right now, but no, I will not, because it's the wrong time, it's the wrong place, it's with the wrong person, etc., 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 right? But guys, that's not enough. We have to say, but why? Because God is offering something so much more. He's offering something that when we do enjoy the good things of this world in the right way, at the right time, for the right reasons, with the right people, something wonderful happens. Something wonderful happens that does not happen if we do it at the wrong time, for the wrong reasons, with the wrong person, right? Because it leads us to salvation. All the good things that God gives us in the world can lead us to salvation. It's not the source of salvation, but it can lead us toward salvation. The good things in the world, the true things in the world, the beautiful things in the world, these are all things that lead to God. But the devil twists them like a prism. He twists them so that they can be used to our destruction. And that's where the temptation comes in. The temptation comes because there is something good about possessing, a nice new car, right? There's nothing good about stealing that car so that you can possess it, right? So recognize that, okay? But let's look at the temptations now that Jesus undergoes, right? These are the temptations. Turn stone into bread, right? Because you're hungry. He is hungry, it's true. He does need to eat, that's true. So, and he's God, right? So at a word, he could do the thing, right? Turn the stone into bread. But here's what Jesus says. This is the wrong time for me to eat. There is something else I need to be focused on right now. Something that is not only equally important to my life, but more important to my life. Man does not live on bread alone, but from every word that comes forth from the mouth of God. What Jesus is saying here is that there is something in my existence that is more valuable than my physical health, something more valuable than my satisfaction of my appetite, something more valuable even than me saving my life in this world. It is my relationship with God. And when Jesus denies himself the flashy, wrong way of providing food in order to preserve his relationship with his Father, that's the win. That's what Jesus is showing us. And in Lent, when we fast, that's what we're doing. We're telling the Lord, I'm making a point to show you that I know that there is more valuable things in this world than just pursuing the things that feed my belly. Right? That's why in Lent we fast. For the same reasons that Jesus does here. Right? And just think about it too. Right? The world offers us food at the price of our soul. Right? Think about communism, for example. Right? Communism says, there is no God, the state will provide you with food. You just need to sell your soul to the state. Abandon God and I will feed you. It's the same temptation that Jesus has here. And so how do we overcome that temptation to want things at the wrong time? We overcome it knowing that not any one thing in this world is necessary for us to have our salvation, but only God. And here's the ironic part, right? The devil says to Jesus, turn this stone into bread so that you can eat and live. And Jesus says, no, there's something more valuable. So Jesus turns his flesh into bread, the Word into our food, that it is upon the Eucharist, the Word spoken by the Father, that we feast and have true life. Jesus not only overcomes the devil, but he gives a positive solution to the temptation that the devil offers. Just have worldly food and forget God. And Jesus says, no, I will not forget God, but not only will I not forget God, but God will feed me. And he says the same thing to us. Don't forget me and I will feed you. Take this, all of you, and eat it. This is my body. Do this in memory of me. So then he goes on and the devil says, okay, well, fine. How about I give you all the stuff in the world? How about I give you all of the power, all of the prestige, a kingship over all the kingdoms. All you have to do is worship me. Man, guys, we fall into this trap all the time, and we don't think we do. Because, I mean, honestly, if I'm being honest, and I thought to myself, gosh, if I were here and the devil were standing in front of me and offered me something, I'd say no, because I knew it was coming from the devil, right? I mean, look, do you guys have the Snow White story? Like, did you grow up with the Snow White story? So most of you, okay, good. So you know the haggard old nasty, the evil, is it a stepmom in Snow White, who with the mirror? Yeah, is that a stepmom? Was she a stepmom? No, I don't think she was a stepmom. Anyways, the queen, the evil queen, right? She looks sinister. She's beautiful, but she looks sinister. What's she do to get Snow White to take the apple? She turns into a little old lady who looks so sweet. And, oh, here, darling, have an apple, right? If the devil showed up and was like, Michael, take this apple, I'd be like, oh, God, no, I don't want to do that, right? I'd like to think that. Now, I may still, I mean, Eve did, so who am I to say that I wouldn't do it, right? But I'd like to think that I wouldn't. But I do it all the time anyways. Why? Because the devil shows up in so many other subtler, sinister ways, right? Hey, man, why don't you just don't do your prayers today because you're tired? Why don't you do that? Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I am kind of tired. I did work hard today. I am kind of tired. Maybe I just don't do my prayers. That's the same doggone thing, right? When the devil tries to get us to take our affection away from God because we deserve it, because we're entitled, what we're doing is we're saying, oh yes, Satan, what you're offering me right now is better than what God has to offer me, right? And so the devil says, Jesus, if you worship me, I'll give you all the stuff. And fortunately, Jesus overcomes it. He says, the Lord alone is God, and him alone shall I serve, right? Nothing you can offer me is worth me abandoning God. Nothing. There's a line where Jesus says, what value is it for a man to gain the whole world if he loses his soul? Right? If I were to tell you guys outright, right? If I were just to tell you this, because this is what the devil does. We don't hear it this way. If I were to say to you, I will give you $1 billion. And no, you know what? I'll give you $100 billion. But in 60 years, you'll burn in hell for eternity. Would you take the $1 billion? Would you take the $100 billion? It's so obvious, right? When you say it that way. But that's not the way the devil does it. He does it carefully. So we have to be aware. We have to be clever about how the devil is saying, hey, you know what? Wouldn't it feel good if you just spent all day playing video games? It would, wouldn't it? Feel real good if you just spent all day playing video games. But when do you worship God? Don't worry about that. You'll have fun playing video games, right? Anytime we choose to do a less good thing at the cost of the greater good thing, we're choosing something wrong. And when we choose any lesser good over God, we are doing, not only are we choosing something poorly, we're sinning. We're doing something evil. Right? Does that make sense? Everybody see that? Right? Good. Okay. So then finally, And so this is where abstinence. I need to connect this. Sorry, I need to connect this to our spiritual life. Right. Last week we talked about prayer and fasting and almsgiving. Right. Oración, ayuno, and obras de caridad. Okay. Right. The three pillars of the Christian spiritual life. In the first temptation, the devil's trying to get Jesus to eat when he shouldn't. We overcome that temptation through the spiritual work of fasting. Okay? Caridad. Is that right? Fasting. In the second temptation, when the devil says, I will give you all these things if you worship me, we overcome that through works of charity, through giving of ourselves. The devil offers you something and will actually take from you. But with the Lord, if we offer something, he will actually give us something. Right? It's the opposite. It's the inverse. So we abstain during Lent. We say no to good things to remind ourselves to always say yes to God first. Okay? And then finally, fasting and almsgiving. Finally, we have where we come into prayer. Okay? Satan says, if you are the Son of God, throw yourselves down, because the Lord will not let you hurt yourself. Imagine the pinnacle, the top of the temple in Jerusalem. Not only is the temple itself really high, but the temple itself is built on a hill. So it's super high, right? It's like, I don't know, it's like the Sears Tower, right? Imagine standing at the top of the Sears Tower and the devil says, hey, you know what? If you're the Son of God, throw yourself off, because the Lord said he'll send angels to catch you. Wouldn't that be cool to see? I'd like to see that. Wouldn't you like to see that, Jesus? Right? Go ahead and throw yourself off. What the devil is doing here, he's tempting Jesus to forfeit his identity, to doubt his identity. This is a crisis of identity the devil is trying to instill in Jesus. Oh my gosh, what if I'm not the Son of God? Prove it, Jesus. Remember, Jesus asked his disciples, who do people say that I am? And the disciples say, bop, 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 bop. And then he says, well, who do you say that I am? And Peter says, you're the Christ, the Son of God. And Jesus says, you're right. You see, Jesus knows who he is. He doesn't need to prove it to anybody. And so he's not going to tempt the Lord. Because to throw himself off would have been to doubt. God, I need you to prove to me. I need you to prove to me what you've already told me. God the Father has said, you are my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. Remember, it just happened in the baptism. Right? He's in the desert now after baptism. When the Father said, you're my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. And now the devil's trying to get Jesus to doubt. God would have done it, but Jesus would have failed. Right? Who do you say that you are? Each one of you. I wish I could look each one of you in the eye and ask this question, but I can't. So I'm just going to scan back and forth for a minute. Okay? Who do you say that you are? Better yet, have you allowed yourself to hear who God says that you are? We live our lives so poorly sometimes because we are in a crisis of identity. We do not know by what name God calls us. Because if we really knew God called us son, God called us daughter, we wouldn't be afraid of anything. We would never forfeit our Father's love for any lesser good. We would know that we never needed to eat bread because God would provide for us, because we're his son and his daughter. This is the core, this is the crux. This is the core temptation. It's a temptation of identity. To know who you are in the sight of God. Right? And Jesus says, I don't need to prove anything to you because I know who my Father calls me. I know what my Father calls me. I know who I am. Right? And this is where prayer comes in. We need to go to prayer, not to say a bunch of words to God. God knows what you need. We go to prayer to listen to who God calls us. We go to prayer to hear the Father say, there you are again, my beloved daughter. There you are again, my favorite son. I'm so glad to see you again. to hear God call us son. Guys, that can fix the whole world. It would fix your crisis over your identity of how you look. It would fix your distorted image of who you think you are. It would distort all of the agonizing hours you spend in the mirror trying to look some different way. It would fix your need to act a fool in front of your friends, to show off. It would fix your need to search for things that don't belong to you, but in fact to be satisfied with what you have. More importantly, it would fix in your gut, that knot of anxiety about life. It would undo that knot, because you'd know, I'm the Father's son. Nothing else really matters. Right? Guys, this Lent we need to pray and fast and give alms so that we can strengthen our ability to overcome the temptations that come our way. Not to be afraid of the temptations, but to embrace the temptations, knowing that we will use them as opportunities to gain a win over the devil. That's what this Lent is about, beating the devil. That's what this Lent is about, putting W's up on the board, racking up points. And I'm not talking about points in like those silly soccer matches that you guys watch, where it's like 1-0, and you're like, oh my gosh. No, I'm talking like basketball kind of points, like 110-0, right? That's the kind of wins that we need against the devil this Lent. So pray, fast, and give alms. And above all else, pray. Go to the Lord and ask him, God, who do you say that I am? And trust him when he answers.